All right, I think we are rolling. So what is going on, everybody? Triple Crown 24 back today. And my card show video recaps are going to be a little bit on the slow side right now because I'm actually idle this upcoming weekend. And I've been really focusing on picking up some dollar box stuff. So it's going to be kind of a little on and off here going forward. But I did want to do some different types of videos, try some new things out, and have some fun with them. So this is one that I thought would be really fun here in January. A lot of you guys really gave me some really kind words and feedback on the collaboration I did over on Filmington's channel with Filmington and Andy. She blinded me with refractors. If you haven't seen that, you can go check it out. We talk about the health of the hobby in 2020. So Filmington is really big on the speculation side of things. So I will tip my cap to him here because this is pretty much a speculation video of my own. But we're going to be looking at prospecting of future Hall of Famers. So at the end of this month, we're going to see the latest class of baseball's Hall of Fame get introduced. And in recent years, we've seen a lot of rookie cards of these players shoot up. And this isn't something that is new. It's probably not too surprising by any means, but as PSA set registries and collectors become more and more focused on the rookie cards and even more so graded rookie cards, I do believe that there is some value into possibly prospecting future Hall of Famers from the collecting side, and then maybe if you're someone who likes to flip cards, from the flipper side as well. So on the collector's side, it's beneficial for you because you get these cards now before you have to pay a premium for them later on down the road. For the flipper side, you have to buy these cards now so that you can move them at a later date. So these are more so longer term holds if you're a flipper, and then as a collector, these are cards that maybe aren't going to fit your collection right away. It might take a few years, but I definitely think that you will get there. So what we're going to do is, lost my train of thought there, I apologize. We're going to look at the first ballot that will be up, and that will be the 2020 ballot. So this one that will be voted on here in the next couple of weeks and will be announced. Then we look at the future eligibles, so the next 5 that will go on the actual Hall of Fame ballot. And then we'll also go into the PSA registry to talk about those guys who could get in on a Veterans Committee vote here in the next few years, or players who are still playing today who people will widely believe will end up in Copperstown when it is all said and done. So I'm going to go into screen share mode here and head up to this top tab and talk about this year's ballot. So anybody whose name is in italics is new to the ballot. Anybody whose name is not in italics is returning this year. I don't want to speculate too much on who I think should get in and who I don't think should get in. That's not really the point of this video, but more so who I think will this year. So there are 2 guys on this ballot that I personally believe will be inducted. The first one will be no surprise. It's just a matter of how much of the vote share he gets, but that would be Derek Jeter. And if you're looking to get a Derek Jeter rookie card, I think that you are a little late to the party. In fact, I think you are. The party's almost over. You should probably get to work here. Most been for a while now. I would say a lot of it rose from a lot of people believing that he might be the first unanimous Hall of Famer. Of course, now that's Mariano Rivera, who had that honor last year, but he still could be the first unanimous position player. And I don't know if that's something that's going to really make too much of a difference. Being the first overall unanimous definitely helped Rivera's case, but I don't know if Jeter being a position player will influence that one way or another. But definitely Jeter, once he gets in, there's going to be a bump in the market despite it kind of being a foregone conclusion that he'll be in. So if you're going to get a Jeter rookie, I think you really have to do it like right now. So pause this video and go out and get a Jeter rookie if you really want one. And the ones that you're really looking at, the 93 SP, if you're looking to get one in the higher end market, if you're looking for a lower end one, I think his 93 Topps card, the draft pick card, in a PSA 9 is probably a pretty good bet. You can get those for around $50 right now, or you can buy them raw for about 15 to 20. I think that's definitely, raw is probably the best way to go overall, in my opinion, right now. I think the 9s are starting to creep up a little too high. Buy 2 raw ones, submit them on your own, probably is what I would do. And then moving into the second player, that would be Larry Walker. I do believe that here on his final year, the 10th year on the ballot. He is going to get the bump in. So far with the tracking, he has picked up a lot of votes that he didn't get last year. Generally, most guys see a decline in some of the private ballots. I believe that most of those are a little bit more controversial, hence why they are private. But with Walker, we've seen this recently with a lot of guys like Tim Raines, for example, back in 2017, who get a lot of support in their final years. People who are on the fence kind of give leeway. I think Walker was a tremendous player who doesn't get enough credit because he played in Colorado for a good portion of his career. And a lot of people just believe that the Colorado effect helps boost your numbers, which is true to some extent, I believe, but I think it's vastly overrated of how much it benefits a player. For example, Todd Helton's the number one on this list, who is not new to the ballot this year, but I don't think he necessarily gets as much credit as he deserves. I'm not saying that he's a Hall of Famer by any means, but I do believe that he should have more percentage of the vote than he does. So that is the 2020 ballot. With Walker, you're looking at his 1990 Leaf. I think you're seeing a lot of cards, in particular his 1990 Leaf card being submitted to PSA right now, with people speculating on that. If you're going to buy one, I think now is a good time. If you don't get it right away after he is announced. If you look at the PSA submissions, a lot of them are basic submissions. So you estimate they'll come back in May or June. People put them up right away. So I think right around May, June, maybe up until the All-Star break is going to be your sweet spot, because that's when the market will be flooded with the most of them. I imagine you can get an 8 or a 9 really cheap at that point in time, compared to what they'd be going for here in January and February. So move into the future eligibles. So these are the players who will be on the ballots in coming years. It will tell you when they're eligible here. I don't want to spend time on every single player just for the sake of time on this video, but kind of point out some of the most notable ones. So next year, we've been kind of spoiled recently with some pretty large Hall of Fame classes, and we've had a lot of slam dunk candidates, I would say, compared to what's normal, at least in the early part of the 2010s. Here, I don't necessarily think we have a slam dunk candidate in 2021. There are some solid players on this list, some guys who you say, hey, he had a few good years, but no one who really stands out to me. I think if you were going to pick one guy here to make a case for, it would have to be Torrey Hunter. Kind of falls into that Omar Vizquel category, where he's an above average offensive player, had some really solid seasons. I believe he had a top 10 finish in MVP voting once or twice, once with the Twins and once with the Tigers, if I'm not mistaken. I know he at least had one with the Tigers, but the defense is really going to be the part of it that boosts him up. But given how Vizquel has had kind of a lack of respect, I don't think that Torrey Hunter is going to see too much. He's a guy who you definitely want to keep tabs on, but I wouldn't expect much movement on his cards overall. So we move into 2022, and this is by far, in my opinion, the most interesting election we're going to see over the next few years. So you have a few guys here who were really, really hot players for several years. So you have a Prince Fielder, a Ryan Howard, a Tim Winston, guys who really don't have the longevity, I would say, to justify inducting them into the Hall of Fame. Scroll through the list here. There's probably a couple names that stand out to you. I think Teixeira is kind of an interesting one. I don't necessarily believe he'll get in, but he's a guy who you definitely want to keep an eye on, I would say. Same with Jimmy Rollins. I think he'll be someone who's maybe a 10th year on the ballot type of guy where he gets the push to get in. Former MVP, pretty good defensively as well at shortstop. And that's a position that I think the Hall of Fame has been a little bit more lax on, in my opinion, in recent years. Shortstops kind of get more of a boost with their offensive numbers, I would say, or get more consideration. That's probably the better way to phrase it. But there are two players here that really stand out, who I think seriously have a really good shot in 2022. So you have David Ortiz and you have Alex Rodriguez, two guys who really dominated the 2000s. The Yankees and the Red Sox were their teams, and those are the two teams that really dominated the American League during that time span too. And A-Rod, steroid controversy around him will probably be what really deters people from voting for him. He's not the most well-liked in the media as well, so I think that could rub some of the writers the wrong way. that could prevent him from getting in and probably throw him into that Bonds Clemens type of thing, or maybe he'll have to pay his dues for a few years. Ortiz, the steroid accusations are there for him. It's not as public as A-Rod, but it's definitely a less talked about thing. There's never been any evidence that's come out to my knowledge of Ortiz using performance enhancers, but there is definitely some people who speculated. Of course, that's pretty rampant among most people. And then with Ortiz, he also is the DH, and that really hurt Edgar Martinez for many years, just because there hasn't been as much love for the DH. So Ortiz, with him, you're looking at his 97 Ultra as a card. Alex Rodriguez is 94 SP. I think that the Rodriguez card is actually pretty affordable right now. It's a really solid buy. A-Rod is going to be a fan favorite player in some circles, and he's going to be a player who's collected long term, in my opinion. He definitely has a solid following. So I think if you pick up the 94 SP foil or just regular 94 SP, that's a pretty good buy right now, just because there isn't as much risk there as maybe with some of these other guys who might be a little bit more forgotten about 10, 20 years down the line. Ortiz, you're looking at his 97 Ultra. I wouldn't say that's as much of a popular card. He did play for Boston, though, so I think that it's a card where Boston fans will probably want his rookie. It does hurt that it's going to be not in a Boston uniform, but I think that he has enough of a following, enough of a love in the hobby to possibly take a flyer on it if you can find it for the right price on the 97 Ultra. But what makes this really compelling is the Bonds and Clemens rookies might be something that really skyrocket this year, as this is their final year of eligibility on the regular ballot. And I think that's really going to be Judgment Day, because you're going to see Ortiz in there and you're going to see A-Rod in there. So it's going to be one of the more controversial elections, that we've seen in quite some time. So I'm looking forward to that. I expect the fireworks to fly. Then the following year, probably not as controversial. Again, I think this year is pretty similar to 2021, where there's a few guys here who had a few solid years, but not anywhere near where I would say you could justify putting them into the Hall of Fame. If I was to pick one name on this list that stood out, you do have K-Rod, Francisco Rodriguez, kind of had an ugly finish there with somewhat with the Orioles, but the Tigers as well towards the end of his career. But back in the 2000s, right there with Rivera as one of the most dominant closers in the game, 6-time All-Star, really solid ERA, posted 2.86 ERA, as you can see right here, under 3 for a reliever, pretty solid. And he had a fantastic postseason in 2002 during the Angels' lone World Series run. So I think K-Rod is one to take a look at. He's a closer, so I don't really know how much his hobby level increase there, but I think it's at least one to keep an eye on. It's not a card I necessarily think you should go out and get a K-Rod rookie right away. We move into 2024, and again, some really solid players here. Maybe Victor Martinez is a guy who some people might make an argument for. David Wright, Chase Lee probably has the best chance to get in, but I don't necessarily believe that there'll be guys who get inducted on the regular ballot. To me, there is a slam dunk and a hopeful here. So you have Adrian Beltre, which in this case, it's on the set registry here, 97 Bowman Chrome. It's going to be the Beltre card that you're looking for. If you can get the International or the International Refractor on that, I think that's a card that will be very much coveted. We're starting to get into the era now where the parallel is prominent among some of these inductees, especially those when we get to the future Hall of Fame registry that have debuted after the year 2000. You're going to see more and more parallels. So I'll talk about which of those you could possibly look at. But if you're looking for the cheaper option on Beltre, you can get the paper card, but I think you should definitely consider the Chrome much more. 9 is a pretty good deal right now, I would say, on that card, PSA 9. And the one that is really interesting, I think, is Joe Mauer. I do not think he's a slam dunk like Adrian Beltre, but I definitely think he is going to be right there near that 70 to 80% mark when he is considered. Really a dominant catcher there in the back half of the 2000s. After that, he's not quite as good, and towards the end of his career, kind of forgotten about almost. But he made that move to first base, which I really think hurt his chances. And we'll talk about some of the catchers that are on this list. Catchers in general don't get too much love in the hobby. Mauer, I would say, is arguably the most popular Twins player of all time, and I think he'll be one of the most collected ones if he does get inducted into the Hall of Fame. He's actually not even on the future Hall of Fame set registry list, but I would say his 2002 Topps card is definitely one to take a look at. If you can get the gold version of that card, that is definitely, I think, a really good buy right now. So look for the 2002 Topps Gold Mauer. It's been a couple of years since he's retired, so he's kind of fallen off the radar. I think once the Hall of Fame talk dies down and we get into maybe April or May, definitely take a look at Mauer, or perhaps maybe even wait until next off season, or if you can get one really quickly here before spring training starts. That's definitely a card to look at for sure. And then we go into 2025. So these are all players who retired at the end of last season. Not a very long list by any means, but I think that there are two slam dunks of this one. The first one is CC Sabathia. See here on the future Hall of Fame registry list. He is 1999 Bowman Chrome is the one to take a look at. Dominant pitcher for many years, and kind of similar case to Mauer where he fell off there a little bit in the last few years of his career. But he was actually really solid in 2019 for the Yankees, in my opinion, all things considered. 250 game winner, which I think is going to kind of be the new benchmark for wins, given how often bullpens are used right now. Fantastic winning percentage overall, so that might be the benefactor of a few really good teams, especially playing for the Yankees for a decade there. The 3,000 strikeout mark, I think, really helps him too, the fact that he got that, and the Cy Young Award under his belt. So good longevity to his career. He's a lefty too, which you don't see too many lefties who get a lot of love. But I think Sabathia, especially being a Yankee, definitely a good one to consider. His 99 Bowman Chrome. I'd probably wait one more year until he's more so out of the limelight. But I think overall Sabathia is a good guy to look for if you can get his rookie at the right price. And then this guy right here, Ichiro. And what I really think is interesting with Ichiro is that he's in the 2001 Topps product as a rookie, and that was kind of the card to get. On the Hall of Fame registry, the SP Authentic is the one that is listed. The same with Albert Pujols, who also appears in 2001 Topps. In my eyes, I think that those SP cards might be kind of gone already. SP Authentic usually holds a premium overall, but the 2001 Topps card is extremely interesting because if you have seen pack openings of 2001 Topps with people searching for this card, a lot of times they are stuck together because of the high gloss of it. So I don't imagine there's going to be too many more Ichiros that are pack pulled in this decade and beyond that could grade a gem mint 10, much less a mint 9. So I think this is a good card to go after right now, especially considering the current market, like what's out there right now and what is graded right now is a pretty good representation of what will be. I don't think the populations will change all that much because they're, like I said, extremely condition sensitive, especially with the green borders. This is a card I actually think if you can get an 8 for below what eBay comps are going for right now, definitely look at an 8 with the Ichiro from 2001. I was having this conversation with a fellow YouTuber recently who picked up a Pujols 2001 Topps in an 8. The 9s on these, 9 is still really good for that card considering how sensitive the 2001 Topps design is. I think at 10, it's going to be one of those, like a 71 Topps where the 10s are just ridiculous. And I think even that will push a lot of people who would normally buy the 10s into the 9s category. And therefore, 8 is going to be more so a more acceptable price point for most collectors. So 8 on a modern card, it kind of seems taboo almost. But I mean, even a 7, if you can get a 7 for a really good price, I really don't think that's all that bad, all things considered there. So Sabathia, Ichiro. So those are guys who have retired now. We'll see a few more here. We'll take a look at the future Hall of Fame set registry. So again, these were picks made by PSA. All of these guys, I definitely think you could make a case for at some point in time. Which ones I think are the best buys right now, in my opinion. These first two right here, these are two guys who are going to be eligible for next year's ballot, I believe, on the Veterans Committee. That would be Gil, Hodges, Jim Cott. I think that Hodges is probably the one that has the better chance. You can see it's weighted higher in the registry, and I think that will draw a lot of people in. Now, it's much more of an expensive card compared to the two. It's a 49 Bowman card, so even at the worst case scenario, you're getting a nice vintage card to add into your collection. But I think if you're going to prospect for next year's Veterans Committee, wait until maybe September is probably a good time. I think that there's going to be a lot of hype around Miller and Simmons from this past year's class until Hall of Fame induction weekend is over. Maybe in May you can take a look at this, but I think that definitely give it a month until after the Hall of Fame induction. Then take a look at Hodges, unless, well, probably not right now is a good time, I would say, because a lot of people are already starting to look towards next year's class. So these two, probably late summer, early fall is when you want to go in on them. Pete Rose, this is already a really tough card. He is the all-time hits king in baseball. It's a high number short print card. I think this in a 64, it just really depends on the price point. But I think if Rose ever gets in, it's going to be after he passes on. So I think you have plenty of time on this card. But again, it's a really rare card, so it's kind of one of those where it's up to you. How badly do you want it? Dave Parker, Dale Murphy, and moving along the list here, some of the guys who were excluded on this last go-round on the Veterans Committee list. So those two, as well as up here with Lou Whitaker for the Veterans Committee. I definitely think that those are guys that you want to take a really close look at. Their prices are still kind of up from people speculating about them this past year with the Veterans Committee. They won't be eligible again until 2023. So probably I would say late 2021, early 2022 is when you want to take a look at these guys. The market might be flooded with them as well because people probably sent in a lot. Like I have 2 Lou Whitakers right now that I plan on sending to PSA. So when those come back, maybe around March or April, when the market has really kind of cooled off after the bump from speculation, that might be a really good time because I feel that there's going to be a huge influx of them available for you readily. Kind of moving along. If Bonds and Clemens get into some point, which I think if you can get either of these cards right here, it's a good buy, particularly with Bonds and Clemens if you get their next year's tops. So Bonds, his is listed as the 86 Fleer update. I think the 86 tops traded is going to be a really popular card, but even if that's a little bit much out of your price point, even as much as I think it's crazy to say, his 87 tops, if you can get 9s for a couple bucks, I think it's definitely something that you got to take a look at really hard and possibly consider getting a few of those. But definitely the 86 traded for tops and the update for Fleer are the ones that you're really going to want to consider. Same with Clemens. I think his 85 tops is a little bit more popular. It's going to kind of be like the Puckett 85 tops, where this is the premium one that you really want to get, the 84 Fleer update, but the 85 tops is probably the more well-known card. It's not the one that goes into the set registry, but it's one that a lot of people will remember, and I think the nostalgia will really drive up that card. But if those guys, the controversial guys, kind of get in, I would say all bets are off for any of the other guys who maybe have been linked to, or Mark McGwire 85 tops, which is a classic card anyways. I think that's a card that you can't really go wrong with owning. But Gary Sheffield rookies, the Sammy Sosa's, Manny Ramirez, a 92 Bowman on him. I guess at that point in time, A-Rod and Ortiz, who we've already talked about. Those are guys who I definitely think if you see Bonds or Clemens get in, or you really think that they will get in, those are cards that I think you should look for as well. And those are cards that are pretty much good to buy anytime, except for Bonds and Clemens. You'll probably want to wait until, again, that March to May range after Hall of Fame talk kind of cools off for the time being. Looking around at some of the other names on here, I like the 92 Fleer update. Jeff Kent does not have too many autographs out there, so I think a lot of people who want to collect Hall of Famers will be more so looking at his rookies if they can't get an autograph. So this is a pretty underrated card right here. Kind of looking around as well at some of these various cards here. You got my boy here, Miguel Cabrera, the 2000 Chrome traded Very tough card to find centered, so I think that if you can find a centered copy for a couple $100 and a 10, you're doing well. Probably not a good time to buy on him right now. I would wait until after he reaches some of his milestones. He's the closest to any active player to 3,000 hits or 500 home runs. So a lot of that will draw a lot of attention to him. So I definitely think Cabrera, unless you do it again, like right now, probably should wait until afterwards or a couple years till after he retires on him. Yadier Molina, his 2004 Topps was actually the one that was voted on. He was the most recent addition to this registry. I think this is a really solid bet. Not a lot of people are talking about Molina, so you can get one here before the start of spring training. Definitely a good buy. Verlander is a really good one here. I think that if you can get his 2006 Topps card, that's a good alternative as well. Again, it's not the one that is in the set registry, but the 2006 Topps is his rookie card. This is his draft pick card. The 2005 Topps is actually a lot more expensive. I would say it's like a 2.5 time bump from his 2006. So the 2006 is really, I think, a card that is a good buy, especially if you get it in like a 9 or something, just because 06, year that the Tigers went to the World Series, he was Rookie of the Year. I think there's a lot with that card. I think it's a good-looking card as well. And then these guys in here, of course, you can't go wrong with Trout. Probably I say you should wait on the Trout. I think it will come down, but so far I've been wrong on that at every single turn. But Scherzer, Kershaw is one. I think if you're going to pick out any of the guys who are still active on this list, this is the card right here to go after, the 2008 Topps Update Kershaw. Best to buy it in the off season, but he's kind of fallen out of the limelight, especially with Buehler kind of becoming the next young prodigy there out in Los Angeles and the issues with Kershaw's injury. This guy is absolutely dominant, and I think he's going to see a bump very similar to what Verlander has seen here. If Kershaw can kind of work with the aging factor that kind of goes along with this, unfortunately. But he's on a very similar trajectory. I can't say it. Very similar path. That's an easier word for me to say, compared to what Verlander was a few years ago towards the end of his run with the Tigers before he was traded to the Astros, which kind of then revitalized him. So let me go ahead and come back here. So that is kind of my speculation on which Hall of Famers I think you should take a look at going forward in the future. Again, that's more so if you're a collector, you can get them cheaper now rather than after they get into the Hall of Fame. I think it's definitely worth it. If not, you still get some classic cards of guys who are very good players. And if you have a connection to those players, I don't think you can go wrong. Or if they're just classic cards, so say the Mark McGwire 85 card, I don't think you can go wrong having one of those in your collection just because of what that card has meant to the hobby in the past. Some of the ones that were not on there, I think the Don Mattingly card, I would be really surprised if more support isn't shown towards Don Mattingly the next time he's on the Veterans Committee. But again, that's a classic card that's always going to command a premium because he's a fan favorite. That's kind of the thing with this. If you want to mitigate risk, the fan favorite players where their rookies are already kind of pricey, even though they're not in the Hall of Fame. So your Dale Murphys, your McGuires, your Mattinglys, those types of guys, Bonds, Clemens to some extent too. Those are ones where they're not going to drop off as much probably if they don't get in, but you're also going to be paying more of a premium for those. If you're someone who's a flipper per se, you definitely want to take a look at some of those guys. So maybe a McGriff is someone who you want to look at a little bit closer. The 2004 Topps Yadier Molina is one that I think you can get some. So the Veterans Committee guys, study those lists, because I think that's where you will find your biggest margin in price increase, because a lot of those guys have kind of been written off at this point in time, but you never know. So that is my video today. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. If you have any picks that maybe I missed out on, you can feel free to let me know and then tell me what you think of my opinion. It's probably sucks, but that's going to do it for me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be sure to see you next time. Have a good one.